Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to our fourth week of Best Year Ever. And you know what? What's always really funny is I love technology, but everything glitches always last minute. It's like, why does it wait till the very last minute to glitch? But what we're hoping is that we can recover and do things really good. We'll see how it all goes technology wise. Here's what we love: we love to say hello to you as you're joining and making it into the room. So make sure that you say hello to us. I see that Nina has made it into the room. So as you're making it into the room, make sure that you tell us hello, tell us where you're joining us from. Tell us what you're excited about. What are you excited about? What do you feel life and momentum on? This is, at least in the US, I know some of you joined us from Australia and different places, but this is January 25th. So we are 25 days into the new year. What are you excited about? Go ahead and jump in on the chat. Make sure that you say hello to us. Do us a huge favor as well, is to like this post, share it with anybody that you think could really benefit from it, and everything else. I see Deborah, who's made it into the room. Hello, Deborah. Welcome. Goddess of Love from Florida. Welcome. Anybody else? And there is Joy, who's made it. Welcome, Joy. Mary, who's in the room from Pittsburgh. You know, I've noticed on all of our streams that Pennsylvania is always in the house, and particularly around Pittsburgh and New Jersey usually seems to always be in the house, always representing. There's Brendana from Edmonton. Welcome. And see, uh, Nina, just as I said, Philadelphia. See, Pennsylvania is always in the house on here. John's joining us from Miami. There's G2. Welcome. Let's see who else is in here. Joe is joining us from Lower Burrell. I'm not sure where that is. Where is that? Is that Pennsylvania? Let's see who else is in the room. They need to say hello to. There's Austin joining us from Arroyo Grande. Joy says, I'm excited to see what God is about to do with my business. Oh, sorry, I'm from Marietta, Georgia. Excellent. Welcome. Anybody else that wants to say hello? We got South Carolina in the house. There's Yolanda. Welcome. Desiree, who is joining us from, let's see, what does Desiree say? Katy, Texas. I'm working a workshop in February. Cool. Joe's actually outside Pittsburgh. And let's see, who else do we have? Marcella from Belize. All right, we got Central America in the house. That's good. G2 is from Spain. That is awesome. Bill's joining us from Arlington, Texas, formerly of Pittsburgh. What is going on? Like, you guys are like taking us over somehow. Deborah says, this is a new venture, and I'm super excited, from Maryland. Darcy's joining us from Portland. And Joe says, I wish I was in Nevada. Do we have Nevada? Oh, look, Clint's actually from the Reno, Tahoe area. Welcome. Anybody else want to say hello as you're making it into the room? And here's what I want to tell everybody about really, really quickly. Matter of fact, if you would give me that slide really quickly. This weekend is boot camp. This is our first boot camp of the year. It's January 29th through the 31st. I want to just get this out of the way really quickly on the front end. This weekend, you can get trained and you can get certified in a single weekend. Go ahead and give me that next slide. What does boot camp cover that's a little bit different than anything that we do? I know some of you have taken our life coach training course, life coach certification course. In boot camp, this is what we cover. It's about 20 hours of training that goes past what we do in our training course. And things that we cover are like, what is coaching? How to listen on a transformational level, the steps of a coaching session, building a coaching framework that gets results, focused, effective coaching that cuts out the fluff, high impact coaching. We give you 2 models of coaching. You'll learn your core skills and characteristics for breakthrough coaching, best practices for ethical coaching, how to ask powerful questions, how to build coaching relationships that last. Now, here's the other thing, is that when you join us this weekend, you can also role play with other people. So you'll see live role plays and you'll see things playing out. Everything is live. I know a lot of things that we do are not live as far as our training, but due to demand last year, when everything changed, we saw an opportunity. Last year was the biggest graduating class that we've ever had in Life Coach Training Institute. We graduated over 1,000 coaches last year. And so we're really excited about this weekend, having the first boot camp. Here's the last few details that you need to know. The cost is only $247. Again, this is not stuff that we cover in the life coach certification course, life coach training course. There is live Q&As at the end of each session, and there are live coaching practice demos that you'll get to experience the entire weekend. And best of all, when Sunday night rolls around, you will be trained and certified as a coach, so you can get everything done this weekend for only $247. Our website's ilifecoachtraining.com. There's a banner right at the front, at the top, and you can join. And for those of you who have joined before that are on, you can tell everybody how amazing boot camp is, and what you learned, and more importantly, how you came out of it actually changed. Let me say hello to some more people. John, aren't you like in Illinois? I'm pretty sure John's in Illinois. Orisha is joining us from Arizona. That's a nice warm place year round, right? All right. So let's jump in. Let me remind you of something that I've said the last couple of weeks really, really quickly. And it's this. If we can light up that slide for me. Is that great lives are designed and created. It's intentional. It doesn't just happen. And so anybody that you see out in the world that you would aspire to be, that you're excited about their life, that you see things do not just like, you don't trip up and accidentally have a good life. There's intention, there's choices. There is some, it's a deliberate work to actually have a life like that. But the last few weeks, as we've been building, one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight was opposition, and the fact that every one of us, anytime you've ever started, anytime you tried to do something new that you never did before, go to school, go back to school, anything that you wanted to do new in your life, January rolled around, you wanted to lose some weight, you wanted to change some kind of a habit, you know as well as I know, it's only a matter of time before opposition shows up in your life. It's the reality of any kind of change is that there's always going to be opposition. I'm not trying to be a downer about that, and I'm not trying to predict something negative on your life. I just want you to know that opposition is a normal happening. Anytime that you change something in your life, you can bank on the fact that there is going to be opposition that pops up in your life. But one of the things that I was thinking about in the last few days is my favorite mug to drink out of is actually a mug from the movie Elf. Anybody seen the movie Elf? I know some of you have different thoughts about what you think are the best Christmas movies in the world. And hands down, it's Elf for me. I think it's the best Will Ferrell movie, and I think it's the best Christmas movie that's out there for different reasons for me. But my favorite mug is drinking out of my Elf mug, which I am still drinking out of, by the way. And there's a reason why. I drink out of it year round. It says smiling's is like smiling's my favorite thing or something like that. It says on it. It's a quote from the movie. And I drink out of it because it's like the perfect amount for coffee and my frothed milk or whatever in the morning. But one of the coolest things that I saw come out about this movie is a couple of years ago, some people got together and they re-engineered the trailer for the movie Elf. And I'm going to show you that really quickly. It's actually not on your side, Austin. It's actually on my side. I'm going to show you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split screen. So if anybody comes in, they don't think that they're watching the wrong thing. And it's going to be about 2 minutes, but it's going to be completely worth your time. So let's take a look at it really quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Hobbs?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think someone sent you a Christmas-gram.
Excuse me. I'm here to see a Walter Hobbs. Dad! I walked all day and night to find you.
You look like you came from the North Pole.
That's exactly where I came from.
It's a little complicated, but it's nothing
Honey.
that we can't handle.
Honey.
What?
He thinks he's an elf.
I'm sorry, what?
I was adopted, but you didn't know I was. So I'm here now. I found you. And guess what? I love you. I love you. I love you.
You get the hell out of here. Some kind of game. What do you want? Some money?
No. I just wanted to meet you. I thought you might want to meet me.
You saw that guy. He's certifiably insane.
Looks like a Christmas tree.
He's
probably just reverting to a state of childlike dependency.
What are we gonna do? We can't leave him alone.
What he needs is to be nurtured.
They were just having a little fun.
Fun. So felonies are fun now. Introduce him to Emily and Michael.
Go away!
Once he comes to terms with reality, he should drop the whole elf thing and move on with his life.
I can't go to sleep unless I get tucked in. All right, let's get it over with.
I'm Buddy the Elf.
Anyone remember Elf quite that way? Here's the funny thing about it, is that it was the exact same clips that we have all come to love and adore and enjoy and laugh and quote and all of those other kinds of things. But the difference was, what was the difference? The difference was the editor who took on the clips, the person who was behind the scenes took the exact same clips. And not only that, but the way that you would cut the camera angle, the way that you would overlay, the way that you would cut the scene, the way that you would actually add the music and even do some of the echoes and everything else had a dynamic effect. And what did they do? They took an hysterical movie and they made it into a scary one, a psychological thriller with the exact same scenes. Why is that important for you to know? What's important for you to know that overcoming opposition in your life is understanding that you are your biggest opposition in your life. I know a lot of us think, well, it's people, it's where I was born, it's what happened to me, it was the hurt, the pain, the rejection, I lost my job, or this happened to the economy, or whatever we want to make up. See, the reality is that we're all storytellers. Every one of us who are in here are storytellers. Now, last week I talked to you about how to make the best story, create the best story of your life. But honestly, what we have to do to make the best story is that we have to stop telling the story that we're telling about ourselves most of the time. And exactly as it was in that movie, you know, I can take the exact same scenes and I can give it to a bunch of different editors and they can create different movies. Just, you know, it's amazing how and here's the crazy thing is if we did the same thing, if we all looked at, let's say that I looked at your life, maybe you're not too happy about things in your life, and I took the same scenes and we sliced them up, it's very possible that what I come out with is a comedy, what I come out with might be a drama, what I might come out with is a thriller, or it might be an epic, but what you come out of it is sadness or a nightmare, or like the worst boring movie ever, or a movie that doesn't make any kind of sense. That's the possibility. What's the reality is that it's amazing how we can look at the different things in our life and we can choose a narrative. We can choose a story out of it, and that's the one that we keep living into. The problem is that it's not just that happens one time, is that most people are cycling through the entire narrative of their life over and over and over again. And so what do you see most of the time in people's lives? Well, here's how I know that it keeps playing out. Is that at the end of the day, when we have this story that we're telling ourselves, what I know is your opposition is there's a reason why you don't already have what you want in your life. There's a reason why you're not at the place that you want to be in your life. And you are the opposition, not other people. Because it's one thing, and if you can light the slide up for me, this will really help us. Our biggest opponent is actually ourselves. And here's the second thing that I'll say about that. If you can light up the next slide for me. I want to make sure that you guys have the important things. So I actually put it in a slide, but we're having some technical difficulties on our end with my screenshot, so I'm getting help. See, it's not what has happened to you, and it's not even the bad choices that you've made in the past. It's what you believe about what's happened to you. It's the choice about how you tell your story. And here's the way that we get our stories. I'm going to show you really quick, and I'm going to pull this from offset back on, because I said earlier, we were talking earlier, and if we can get that lighted up on here. I'd said earlier that I wasn't going to use a whiteboard, and then I was like, last minute, like, I'm going to use a whiteboard, possibly. So I didn't actually bring it in. And I realized that since I did this last minute, it's like, oh, it's a little bit cut off, but I'm going to make it work, okay? Here's how we come up with our stories, okay? Here's how you came up with the narrative that you have. Is that there's an event or there's a circumstance or there's something that happened. Maybe it's where you were born, maybe it's where you're from, maybe it's something that was told to you in your life. Any number of things. You can pick any event. In most cases, we have an event that is emotional in some kind of a way. So I had an emotional intensity. So I can say it was emotionally intense. That's one part about it. And not all the time, but sometimes it was repetitious. So there's some repetition sometimes involved. And it usually had to do with not only an event, but often, not every time, but it has to do with other people. Now, it's fine that you had the event. The fact is the event happened. There's no argument about that. The question really is like, what did the event mean? What did the event mean to you in terms of how you saw it, in terms of how you edited the event? Because have you ever had someone experience the same thing? Like you had two kids who were in the same room and something went down, and then you asked the story and everybody had a different perspective. It was like, this isn't quite the same story. And granted, some people remember things differently, but some people have an ability, and it's amazing because it comes really down to this, is what is and I do not want to write with that, it's a Sharpie. What it comes down to is what your eye is actually focused on. What is the thing that you are honed in on? And if you think that your story is a tragic one, then that's what you're going to find in every circumstance. Because what ends up happening is that every time something happens to us, we do something and we create meaning out of what happened. And you know what a meaning really is? It's a belief. That's how we get it. It's how and you know what we end up doing then? Is then we start telling stories. We start having a story about it. And you know what ends up happening then? It's a mantra. Let me tell you what you're doing your entire life when you tell your story. And everybody's got stories, right? Every time you tell your story, is that you're not only and you think that you're telling a true story. I always tell our coaches, don't believe your clients. They always lie to you. And that usually makes people take a step back. Are you saying that everybody lies? No, people think that they're actually telling the truth about their stories. But the reality is that they are so good at telling their story, the more that they tell it. So like if I keep telling my story, here's the thing that happens, is that it actually becomes a mantra. That's what it ends up like. My whole story will actually start boiling down to a mantra. What are you doing? What you're really doing in your brain, if I had a human brain here, if you want to know the science behind it, well, it's like the worst brain of all time. If you want to know the science behind what's happening, is that we're actually, every time you tell your story, you're just conditioning your brain. You're creating neural pathways, and you keep traveling the exact same thought every time you tell that story, because we're suckers for stories, right? We're all storytellers. A lot of teaching and learning through the generations has actually been passed through by story. You know why? Because I can remember a story. I can't really remember a fact. But someone who's a really good storyteller, not only, it's just like in that movie trailer. How could you make one of the easiest ways to change how that thing was edited was just to change the music. And when you change the music, now I suddenly get the emotions, riled up, and you feel whatever you're feeling. So when you watch a trailer, even if you didn't even watch a scene, you would feel scared. You would feel depressed. You'd feel like there's some kind of psycho who's chasing you down, whatever. And see, this is what ends up happening, is that the more we tell the story, I can go to that place anytime that I want. And you know what? I can go back in time and I can tell that story to such a great detail that people can see the pictures. They can feel what I'm feeling. They can feel scared. They can feel bad for me. They can feel sympathy. There's all of these things that happen. Meanwhile, what's happening is I'm creating neural pathways. That's the way the science goes, is I have common paths that I travel day after day after day in my thinking. And what ends up happening is a lot of times people have mantras. Maybe you've got some mantras like these. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to get past this. I'll never be loved. I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good dad. Maybe you just say things like, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not talented enough, I could never do that, I'd never have enough time, I'm never going to have enough money. You know what I hear some people say? They'll say things like, um, all month I've been wanting to go to the beach and it's been sunny every day, except for the day that I go to the beach and that's the day that it rains. Exactly. It's exactly what I figured. That's the story of my life. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Now I'm a Southern boy, so I heard that more in the South when I was growing up. That's the story of my life. Every time I think things are going my way, and that's literally what they're saying. They're saying this is their story, and they create a mantra. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not, because the only way that they're going to see any event is that they are so focused on whatever is going to go wrong, they actually have an expectation of bad things are about to happen to them. Even if something good happens to them, they can't even enjoy what's good, because when is the other shoe going to drop? Because they are so conditioned by their story. And the story that we tell ourselves, I mean, it's amazing to me how good people are at feeling bad and hurting themselves through their stories. It's like, why are we so quickly wired for pain and to put ourselves through things? I'm not really sure. Well, we've got to start changing these things. And one of the ways that one of the clients that I can think of back in time of where this kind of came up, and it's happened, and it's come up with really every client, because I think that every person has a problem with their storytelling. And I'm going to give you 5 things in just a second of how we correct that so that we can have the best year ever. But let me just humor me with this with the story really quick. So I had this client some years ago, and I noticed that when we got to this one particular part, they really wanted to leap off. They had been in this career for their entire adult, life, doing this thing. They'd been really successful, and they wanted to pivot with what they've been doing into entrepreneurship. So they'd been working in education, and they were actually a teacher of teachers. Like, they've been training teachers, they've been doing pedagogy and curriculum development, all of this other kinds of stuff they've been doing. So they've been really successful and actually had a reputation in it. But the funny thing was that I kept noticing is after we were trying to go after something and move, I kept noticing this resistance that was popping up. I was like, ooh, what's this resistance? And what is this thing that's kind of coming up in this person's life? What's the opposition that's coming up? And so I just asked them one day. I was like, hey, well, let me ask you this. How do you see yourself? Like, how do you see yourself when, because they kept bumping up against, like, well, how do you see it? And how do you see yourself? And I was shocked when they told me, well, the way that I see myself is I'm just not as smart as everybody else. And I'm like, wait, say that again. And they're like, yeah, I'm just, I'm not as smart as everybody else. And I'm like, well, where does that come from? Can you tell me? Because I want evidence. If somebody says this, I'm not as smart as everyone, what were they telling me? They were telling me their mantra. You know what that means? That they're probably going to have a story that they're going to tell me. And they did. Told me the story of how when they were kids, that school was actually very hard for them. They worked really hard, and and at the end of it, I had to work twice as hard as the people who were getting the best grades, that were at the top of my class. I had to work twice as hard, study twice as hard to get the kinds of grades that I was getting. And so now it was an actual barrier for them to be able to move forward, because that's what they really believed, is that their story that they had told them the whole life, which, how did this ever serve them? I'm not really sure. But what they told me is that now that they're in the spot of trying to move forward, now this thing is kicking up because they don't believe that they're smart enough to be. And I'm like, okay. And so what did I do is I did some of my own editing out of what they told me. I said, well, you're a teacher, right? And they were like, yeah, I've been a teacher for whatever. I said, if you had one of your students who came to you every day, they were struggling, what would you think? Would you just get tired of working with them? And they're like, no, I'd actually I really appreciate that they're actually taking ownership and they're working every day. They're going to tutors and all of it. I'd really appreciate that. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you think that person has value? You're like, yeah, those are my favorite people to work with and everything. And that's the story that they're talking. I'm like, that's really interesting. That's how you see it. Tell me this. What are you more interested in? Are you more interested in someone who has all of the credentials? Or are you more interested in a person who actually proves that they can do the job? the results. They're like, oh yeah, the results and all this. And the more that they started talking and the more that I pried and I asked questions, what we end up doing is that we edit the story. Because here's what's true for all of us. Like if you're in a war, I don't think that you want someone who just made the grade on a test, but they have never been tested in their life. What you want is somebody who's been in the trenches, who's actually been in a fight every now and then, that is going to persevere, that's going to continue to plow through and do whatever they think that they need to do to be able to move forward. See, what's true, and if you can light the slide up for me, is that we are the best at inflicting harm on ourselves. Most of the pain that you experience in your life, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but most of the pain that you experience in your life is in your mind. I don't know if you've thought about that before, but it's actually in your mind. That's where we create it. Because what is actually inflicting pain on you may not even be an issue for me if I looked at the exact same story. Who's right? Well, hopefully you're not just inflicting pain, but you know what? You can't have the best year ever if you're always using your mind. Like I believe that our minds are an incredible God-given ability to create, to develop, to do everything that we could possibly do. But most of us are not using our brains very creatively. Like our mind can step outside of ourselves. Like you have to ask the question, what is the story that I'm telling me? And is this telling myself? And what mantras am I speaking over my life? And are those mantras going to help me get to where I actually want to go? And here's the thing is that your imagination actually has substance about it. I don't know if you thought about this, but actually in brain science, and we learned more about the brain over the last 10 years than we really ever knew in history. And one of the things that's true is that every thought that you have has a feeling associated with it. But the things that you think actually take up real estate. They actually have substance. There's proteins released and everything else. There's chemical stuff that goes on and everything else. So much so that when you relive the past, it is as though because your brain doesn't know the difference. When you relive the past, when you look back in the past, when you live in these things, it's as though you're living them in the present. That's why it's so important, because what happens is that when you keep telling those stories, you are literally, to your brain, you are literally living the story over and over again. You are conditioning your brain. You are conditioning everything inside of you to continue living out the same kind of life that you really don't want. Your imagination is really powerful. That's why I can play a song and you can instantly go there. I can paint a picture and you can see it in your mind and you can go there and you can feel what I'm feeling. But it's also why some of you can go back to some of the times when you made your worst choices, when you weren't at your best or any of those other things. Do you know that when you think about those things, when you contemplate them, or if you only look at those situations through the editing tool in your mind of saying, this is what my story means. This is what was true about my life and will always be true about my life. You know what? When you look at it through the exact same lens over and over again, that's unfortunately who you're going to become. You will always become what you behold. And if that's the picture that you continue putting in front of you, then you know what? Your brain can only serve up what you're feeding it all the time. So how do we change this? And how do we overcome opposition? And how do we change so that we're not opposing ourselves? Here's the first thing. Light this slide up for me. Is that when you begin to tell a new story, you'll begin to live a new experience. Now, for some of you, think that that's hocus pocus, and some of you might be calling bullcrap on me. Well, I don't care if you do or not. See, how we get to meaning in our life, when you were a kid, you didn't really step outside of yourself, but you can now. Like if you were a dog, you wouldn't be able to step outside yourself. Like if my dog, and we have a 70-pound puppy right now, she's taking over our life, and she's probably going to be about 130 pounds. She's only like 7 months old. So she's a massive dog. And so she's learning right now. But you know how she's learning? She's learning by being conditioned of what she gets a reward for, or what she gets a harsh talking to for, or whatever. It's conditioning her. But she's not standing outside herself when she's pouting and contemplating, I think that I really disappointed my family. Oh, I really shouldn't have eaten that food. Wow, why did I step in my own poop? Why did I eat that stick? Why did I eat that thing that made me throw up? Why am I always stealing toys from the other dog? She's not contemplating any of those things because she's a dog. But for every one of us, we have an opportunity to step back and say, I can look back at any story and I can revisit any scene in my life and I can tell a different story. Because here's what it really comes down to. I'm going to give you a big word right here. And it's the word evaluation. The people who live superior lives, the people who do new things, who challenge the status quo, who change things in their life, have the best evaluations about anything that's going on in their life at any time. Like what a bad evaluation is that when something happens in your life and you continue to repeat it and you don't really change it, and you think the same way about yourself and about that scene for the rest of your life. Superior evaluations means that I can take a look at whatever scene was going on in my life and I can truly draw out, if I can really think about who I was at any time. Here's an easy evaluation. For any of us who have done disappointing things, made bad choices, we all know if we went back to that time with the wisdom and who we are now, we would have never made that decision. So I can't really look at that person anymore because I'm not that person anymore. I'm grown. We've all grown. But I can look back at those things and I can pull out anything that I want to pull out. I can talk about my perseverance. I can talk about not quitting. I can talk about any of those things. And they are all true because who determines meaning at the end of the day? You and I get to determine meaning. But we've got to start having new evaluations. We need to have better evaluations about the things that are going on in our lives. Otherwise, here's the thing. If you don't start changing the way that you see things and telling your story, then you're going to keep repeating it. And that opposition, that thing in you, it doesn't matter if you move to a different city, different state, different country, get a new wife, get a new husband, go to school. I've watched coaches do this for years as well, that they can't stop getting certifications because they haven't dealt with what's going on in their heart and the fact that they have imposter syndrome or whatever. And they think maybe it'll go away if I go and study more, if I watch more videos or whatever. It's not going away because that's not the problem. The problem's something in here. It's the story that you're telling yourself. And when you tell your story, you will have a new life, but you've got to change the story. Here's the second thing. The second thing is that you've got to be a little bit more creative, and you've got to quit reliving the worst parts of your past. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that most of us relive our worst moments all the time. I don't know about you, but I've been guilty of this in the past, where it's like, what is it about our worst moments that we want to go back and relive them? It's like, I want to feel that pain all over again. You have had great moments in your life. There are some moments in your life where you were so bold, you were so persevering, you showed up on the scene, all of those kinds of things. You were loyal, you were a friend, you stayed up all night, all of those things. There's things about you that you take for granted. And why don't you relive those moments? Like, we have the ability that if we want to condition ourselves, let's condition ourselves based on our best moments. There's nothing fake about that because that's who you truly are. But most people spend their time reliving their worst moments and the worst parts of when their character was exposed. I mean, think about it in your life. What we have to do then is that we go back to our best moments. You know what you might need to do? You might need to have pictures up on your wall. You might need to be able to look at things. I had some things that were from some of my best moments in the past that I had hidden away and wrapped up in paper because I thought that they didn't really matter. And there was one day I heard this voice outside of me. And I always say that voice is God because it's smarter than I am. And it was like, hey, you know what? You need to quit hiding your success and you need to pull it out and you need to look at it. Because there were some things every now and then that when I looked at it, I knew that there was pain associated with some of the decisions that I made during that time. But actually, the reality is that I'm painting with a broad brush because I'm looking at the story. And then honestly, the story was 99% amazing and it was 1% painful. These are the ways that we've got to turn things. You can grab the good out of anything, whether it was a relationship or a job or any of those things. You can find the greatest. And you know what? When you start doing that, for one, look for your best moments and at the same time that you're changing your story about the hard moments. Here's the third thing. Third thing is is that your imagination, if you haven't picked up on this, is the rehearsal for things to come. We are rehearsing. One of the things that I've learned about more recent years, they did some studies on some athletes with visualization. And one of the things that they found is that you can actually help people not get into slumps, because one of the things about athletes, if you've ever noticed somebody who has a hitting slump or a shooting slump in basketball or whatever kind of slump in a sport, you pick your sport and they say, oh, he hasn't been able to hit a shot for 6 games in a row. He's in a really bad shooting slump. Well, a slump can happen, one, if there is a mechanical issue, like literally, like, if somebody's got an injury, then they need to rehab from the injury. But if there's a mechanical issue with the way that they are shooting or batting or whatever, then that thing just needs to be corrected, right? But the reality is that most people who are playing a sport have already practiced it so many hours, they don't really have a mechanical issue. You know what the issue is? The issue is here. It's the story that they tell. And whenever they have a bad game or they missed a shot, they relive that moment so many times that they condition their body to such an extent that they freeze up at the free throw line and they brick, or they miss pitches that they would normally hit, those kinds of things. Those are the ways that people get shut down. Now, what I learned about this stuff with slumps is that you'll see the people who thrive, the Michael Jordans of the world, who want the ball. And he said it himself. He's missed, hundreds of final shots. But he's also taken, thousands of final shots. What he had done is that he had conditioned himself based on not only his success, but also showing up in the moment when he felt the resistance to push through the comfort zone. And these people who are amazing and are great and have become mentally tough are the people who have shown up in those kinds of moments, willing to take the shot and not living with yesterday's failure. Matter of fact, if you ever watch any of the movies or stories about Michael Jordan, he had a ridiculous things that ridiculous pressure that most people would crumble under, that he seemed to succeed in. That's how we do it. Here's the next thing. You need to understand that you actually need resistance in your life, because it's the only way that you get a plane off of the ground is to have resistance. You know that you can't fly a plane if there's not resistance. But you know what? Inertia stinks at that moment because you don't feel like you have any momentum. The only way that you can get momentum is to begin to take that first step in the first movement that doesn't look like much. It looks like sometimes the first movement that you take in your life doesn't even look like movement at all, except that it is. It's building over time, movement, until we take to the sky. Last week, we were with a group of people, and I felt this urge to encourage everybody who is in the room, and maybe this will be encouraging for you. For any of you who have had a bumpy ride in the last year, and you feel like it was a really hard year or whatever, I want you to understand that flying, when you're trying to elevate, when you're trying to get to the next level, that's the bumpiest part of the ride. Once you get up there, it's smooth sailing. It's cruise control, right? You just cruise and you're at flying altitude. That's what they say, is that they fly above the turbulence and everything else. I want you to know, if you're feeling bumps and everything else, that means that you're elevating. It actually means that you're going to the next level. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. This is the way the opposition feels, that you actually need the resistance. The only way that you can change. It's the only way that you can grow. It's the only way that it can actually matter to you in your life, is that you have that. Know this, is if the last year's been bumpy, it's only because you're elevating. It's only because you're going to the next level. And this is actually what flying feels like. And you know what? Cruising altitude's not far away. But the bumps means that you're growing. The bumps means that you're going to the next level and taking those things. Here's the last thing. Last thing is this, is that you can tell any story that you want, but you've got to make sure the story that you tell about yourself empowers you, gives you options, and makes you more resourceful. And here's what I mean by that, is that most of the time when we tell stories about ourselves, we don't have money, we're lacking something. If you're telling a story or a new story that leaves you in lack, that's a bad story. You've got to change the story. When I hear people tell the story about money, and we had just recently, someone brought something to me and they were like, hey, this person's actually asking if we have some kind of scholarship or discount, which you guys know that we're already a very affordable program. We're already on the front end discounted because we've taken out everything that we possibly could to make it affordable. But they had brought this person because we actually read our emails and all of this other stuff, but they were like, this person actually wants a discount, or they want some kind of a scholarship to basically get everything for free. And so we looked at it. We looked at the history of this person and how long they've actually been in the system for like 5 years. And in 5 years, and this is what part of the request was, I'm on a fixed income, and that's why I'm looking for a scholarship. And I'm like, holy crap, I would love to have a fixed income. Now, some of you are like, what are you talking about? Because I know every day, I don't know how much I'm going to make tomorrow. I don't know how much I'm going to make next week. I have to work every week. If I have a fixed income, you know what that tells me? It tells me I know how much I'm going to make every day, how much I'm going to make every year. You think in 5 years, I can come up with $200 in 5 years? If that's really what my commitment is and everything else? See, it's really, really important that the way that we tell our story actually empowers us and opens us up to resources. Because a lot of people are in a position of, if somebody doesn't come and bail me out, I have no more options. But the people who have truly made a decision, we talked about this a few weeks ago, the people who have truly been decisive and have burned their bridges are going to find a way. And that's what we've got to do, is that whatever story we tell has to, and if you can light the slide back up for me, has to make you more resourceful. It has to make you more powerful than you were before, and it has to give you options. If it's not doing that for you, it's a bad story, and it has to be changed. These are the ways that we start living a better life. This is the way that we live the best year ever, is that you start telling different stories than what you're telling right now. Now, let me finish up with this, and then I'm going to just look at comments really, really quickly. If you can light this up, just as a reminder, this weekend is boot camp. If you've never gotten trained and certified, we already have an online on-demand program that you can enroll in any day that you want. But this weekend, boot camp is January 29th through the 31st. It's about 20 hours on top of what we offer in our normal life coach training course. You start with us on Friday. We're going to go 2 hours on Friday. We're going to have 2 8-hour days on Saturday and Sunday. You do get breaks. Here's what we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering what is life coaching, how to listen on a transformational level, the steps of a coaching session. We're going to go really deep in those things. You're going to walk away with a couple of different models of how to coach someone. What we're going to do is we're going to guide you through the entire process, and you're going to walk away with confidence, and you're going to walk away with excitement and transformation in your own right. And here's the last part that you need to know. We're also going to be doing Q&As at the end of each one of these sessions. So if you have anything that's unclear, you're going to have me live during that entire time. We do Q&As at the end of each session. Here's the other thing that we're doing. If you can light that slide up for me. Not only we do Q&As at the end of each one, but we're going to have live coaching practice demos. So you'll actually see people participating in a coaching session and know what that looks like. The cost is only $247. And you can get trained and certified. Again, we can start on Friday night, get your certificate by Sunday evening, and you're done. $247. It's a steal. We always have people telling us that we should charge a lot more. And some of the people who are even watching us tonight have been in boot camp before. So I'm going to encourage you to that. Our website's ilifecoachtraining.com. You can go on our like page, right here on this like page, or in the email, and you can get there. I know a lot of people are on our email list already. Let me say hello to some people who also made it into the room. Awesome. Let me say hello to Keisha. Hey, Keisha. And there's Fran from South Carolina. That's awesome. Let's see who else is in here that I did not say hello to. Oh yeah. So here's a question. I had the question of what certification is actually included for this weekend. It's your CLC, so Certified Life Coach. We have 2 levels of certification at Life Coach Training Institute. We have the CLC, Certified Life Coach. That's the first level, but we also have the CPC, Certified Professional Coach. You do have to take care of boot camp and knock that out before you can go for a certified professional coach. And so you have those options, and you have ways to be able to grow and go from boot camp into advanced skills training. But we only offer advanced skills training about 4 times a year. So that one will be probably coming up in like March. So you can get this under your belt and get it knocked out this weekend. And if you want to go for CPC training, then you have that option in the next couple of months. All right. Hey, there's Heather joining us from the Bahamas. Hey, there's Stephanie from San Diego. Welcome, Stephanie. Taish says that boot camp is amazing. I appreciate that so much. Jerry's joining us from San Francisco. Hey, there's Mihai. How's it going, Mihai? Anybody else want to say hello? Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Do us a huge favor. Like this post, share it, let people know that you were inspired by it, encouraged by it. Anybody who could really benefit, whether they're going to become a coach or not. What we always want to give away is things of real value that can really help people. So I appreciate that. Just take a second and just hit like. That just tells Facebook we're doing a good job, YouTube, and even Instagram that, hey, these guys are doing a good job and they're doing something of value, those kinds of things. Anybody else want to say hello? All right. I think that is it. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. We have a special thing coming up for you in February. Now, what do we got? Do we have another week of January still? No, February starts next week. Next week, Lindsay Shearer, who is over our Jumpstart Your Online Coaching Practice, is going to be with us the entire month of February. She's also the writer of the book Amplified Ambition. And all of February is going to be Amplified Ambition Month, and she's going to be with us, sharing some of the things that she's learned in her journey and some of the things that have helped a lot of entrepreneurs, but just individuals who are trying to get to the next level. So February is going to be an amazing month, and you'll get to know Lindsay, and it's going to be awesome. So listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Just want to make sure that I'm not saying missing anything. I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.